Is Lewis Hamilton on his way out? After finishing behind his younger teammate George Russell in the Miami Grand Prix, questions about where the team stands with him as their number one option have been raised. Some people are starting to believe that the times they are a-changing, so the big question is, are they? Stick around to the end of the video and let's talk about it. Ralf Schumacher, a Formula F1 driver, has shared his thoughts on Lewis Hamilton's emotions following the Miami Grand Prix weekend. Hamilton, who experienced challenging practice and qualifying sessions, finished behind his talented teammate George Russell. According to Schumacher, Hamilton, who secured a P6 position, must have been filled with intense frustration and anger. Despite commencing the race from the 13th spot, Hamilton showcased a remarkable display of skill as he mounted a recovery drive. However, his speed fell short of matching Russell, who secured a 4th place finish, surpassing Hamilton. The overall performance of the Mercedes team was underwhelming, ranking 3rd in terms of race pace behind Red Bull and Aston Martin. While this can be seen as a decent attempt at damage control for the weekend, the 7-time world champion Hamilton couldn't have been pleased. Schumacher suggests that Hamilton, who is accustomed to winning, is frustrated by his team's inadequate pace. He said, "Lewis Hamilton is currently going to be extremely seething. He's not used to not winning. He wants attention. You can always see that in his outfits. In Miami, he landed behind his teammate George Russell. This is a maximum penalty for Hamilton." According to the former driver, Hamilton being outraced by Russell is the most significant punishment he could face, considering his accustomed role as a race victor. Whether Red Bull will be dangerous again this season will become apparent in Europe when the many updates come. Where you can always hope is that Red Bull doesn't get the best out of the car. Then there might be a chance for someone else, especially Mercedes could be expected again after the updates. I don't trust the other teams that much. Mercedes is coming to Europe with a whole new concept. I expect a significant increase, otherwise they have a real problem. Nevertheless, Hamilton's Mercedes team can find comfort in the imminent arrival of upgrades scheduled for Imola. These upgrades are said to encompass a fresh floor, body and front suspension setup. Although the new design may not instantaneously bridge the gap to Red Bull, it is anticipated to enhance Mercedes' ability to contend for podium finishes on a more frequent basis. Schumacher maintains confidence in the Silver Arrows, believing that the new concept will prove to be effective. According to Formula F1 driver Johnny Herbert, Lewis Hamilton's prime days are now in the past as a new generation, led by Max Verstappen, assumes control. Despite Hamilton's remarkable achievements, such as matching Michael Schumacher's 7 world championships in 2020 and becoming the first driver to surpass 100 Grand Prix victories in the subsequent year, Herbert believes that Hamilton's dominance is waning in the face of emerging talents. Nonetheless, Hamilton encountered the inaugural winless season of his career in 2022, and in the early stages of the new season, he has been outperformed in qualifying by his teammate George Russell in 4 out of 5 races. Herbert speculates that Hamilton's most glorious days are now behind him. However, he cautions that if Mercedes manages to regain their competitiveness and return to contention for race victories, Hamilton could once again become a formidable threat on the track. Herbert said, "Lewis may not be at his peak. That peak has gone by, but it is still a bloody high ability that he still possesses. I don't see that being an issue at all. As we all know, for instance, if you play golf and you hit a great shot, that makes you feel, I want to crack on. That is the thing that can suddenly reignite that fire in Lewis, which I think is slightly turned down at the moment, because it is not quite working out in the way that he wanted." Herbert emphasized his immense respect for Hamilton's accomplishments, drawing parallels between the emergence of Verstappen, Russell and McLaren's Lando Norris, and the historical instances when legendary figures like Niki Lauda and Ayrton Senna entered the Formula One arena. He acknowledges that the sport has always witnessed the rise of new talents, and the current generation is no exception, heralding an exciting era akin to the past. He is absolutely in the top 3 British drivers ever, he said. He is up against a new generation. There always has been in most decades. I remember Ayrton turning up and changing everything in '84. Niki did likewise, Jackie Stewart, Jim Clark. Then in the modern era it's Mika Hakkinen and Michael Schumacher. They are the special ones who come through every decade, and I think we are seeing that now with Max, Lando and George. Other people are starting to buy into this way of thinking as well. According to Formula One pundit Peter Windsor, George Russell holds a qualifying advantage over his Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton, drawing a parallel to how Ayrton Senna had a similar edge over Alain Prost during their time together at McLaren. Russell, who replaced Valtteri Bottas, made a remarkable impression in his debut season as a Mercedes driver in 2022, securing the team's sole victory while Hamilton endured his first winless campaign in his illustrious career. This trend has carried over into the new season, with Russell consistently out-qualifying Hamilton in all but one of the initial 5 races of 2023. In the Miami Grand Prix last weekend, Hamilton secured the 13th position in qualifying but managed to make a recovery to finish 6th, trailing Russell by 2 places but with a significant gap of 18 seconds. During a recent YouTube stream, Windsor was asked by a viewer to identify the specific areas where Hamilton exhibits weakness in comparison to Russell and his former teammate Bottas. In response, Windsor highlighted Russell's audacity and precision during qualifying laps as distinguishing factors, going into detail by saying, "I don't think he's got any weakness compared with Bottas. Nothing against Valtteri, but I don't see one area where he was better than Lewis. I think George is better than Lewis a little bit in the way that Senna was better than Prost in qualifying sometimes. Just incredibly fine, not judgment, but just taking it a little bit further. If Lewis is leaving 3 centimetres, George will leave 1.5 on a qualifying lap, and sometimes it will result in an error, as it did obviously in qualifying for the sprint race in Baku. I think it's just that. I think that's the way George has always driven. He's absolutely no margin at all, and sometimes it gets the better of him. And I think that's where possibly you could argue he has an edge over Lewis, but you could say that's the quality of Lewis, that he doesn't put himself in that position, and he's more on top of the car, and very rarely does he make the sort of mistakes that George does when he's right on the edge. The sort of mistakes Lewis makes are standard mistakes, like getting the tyre warm-up wrong or traffic, not pacing the traffic correctly, or maybe making a judgment call on setup and the tyre pressure doesn't go the way they think it's going to go. Things like that. But then George makes the same mistakes like that. I would say it's only that, and I still think Lewis has got a wider palette of operational factors that he can play with than George, in terms of his natural ability and what he can do with the car over a period of time. Given the nature of time, a changing of the guard is bound to happen. In your opinion, is it finally happening this season? Tell us your take on the matter in the comments down below. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.